Thanks, Goose. Well, those anthropomorphic aviators are back with Star Fox Zero.
Yes, the long-dormant on-rails shooter is taking flight with a new adventure for the first time in 2 console generations. Although I'm not sure that we can technically call it a new adventure, since this is pretty much a reimagining of the N64 outing, which was called Lylat Wars here in Australia.
Yeah, it's basically the exact same story, with the exiled scientist Andross unleashing an invasion throughout the Lylat system, and it's up to Fox, Falco, Slippy and Peppy to put a stop to it.
Yeah, and the game even has a very similar layout, where you start on Corneria, which is a pretty faithful recreation of the 64 level. And along the way to the final planet Venom, you'll find quite a few homages to that classic game.
Sadly, I don't think this game is going to be remembered as a classic, because when it's at its best, it's a pale imitation of a game that came out almost 20 years ago, and when it's at its worst, it's a confused mess of awkward controls, gimmicks, and weak level design.
Yeah, I mean, I think I enjoyed it a little bit more than you, but for a fan favourite, it's decidedly average, and that's disappointing. But when it's embracing the thing that makes Star Fox great, which is solid on-rails shooting, it's actually quite good.
Is it though, Hex? I don't think they've pulled off the action as well as they did with the 64 version. The core of the problems with this game is in the controls. The big new feature slash gimmick is that the Wii U's gamepad serves as a cockpit view, which gives you a sort of first-person window into the action. And it also uses the gamepad's motion controls to assist with aiming, so you can use the pad to aim around the screen for extra precision. At least that is the theory.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, and occasionally in practice, I found it quite helpful. After you get used to it, there are plenty of moments where you can see the potential of this setup. And it can feel strangely satisfying taking down foes by flying in one direction while aiming in another.
But it's a bit hard to put into words why it doesn't work that well. If I could describe it in a feeling, it would be like a, huh. Part of it is that you're trying to constantly split your attention from looking at the TV to looking at the gamepad. And at times, I just wasn't sure where to look, so I'd end up crashing into things.
Yeah, it does take a little bit of getting used to with your brain having to kind of split between 2 different perspectives like that.
Yeah, and I just found I was thinking more about the controls than the game itself. It wasn't intuitive. It's like I'm patting my head and rubbing my belly at the same time, but I never get any better at it. Yeah, it's like that.
I can do it.
I can't.
I can't do it the other way, though. Oh, yes, I can. No, I can't. Look, I grew to enjoy it, but I think tying aiming to motion controls the way they have here still has its issues. For example, you'll regularly find your center of aim wandering off to the side as your hands just naturally shift position. And you don't really notice until you realize you're fighting with the game to aim where you want to.
There's actually 2 buttons on the controller dedicated to correcting your aim. And you know your control scheme's in trouble when you're given 2 buttons, multiple options to try and fix it.
Yeah, there is also a co-op mode though. Here, one of you flies and shoots while the other just shoots, and you compete for a high score. And I actually thought that was a good way to play.
It definitely takes the edge off just having one screen to focus on, but it doesn't fix the other issues.
Yeah. Now, you can actually turn off motion controls for some parts. But then that never feels quite right, since a lot of the game is designed to need them and some parts actually require them.
Unfortunately, the real crime is that way too much of the game isn't focused on the traditional Star Fox formula. It feels like well over half of the game takes place outside of the R-Wing. You're always forced to go into that chicken walker mode, which is one of the most annoying things I've ever had to control.
Yeah, and if it isn't the chicken walker, it's the tank or the hovercopter or something. And I loved those extra vehicles as little bonuses off the beaten track in the 64 game, but they're just unwelcome as a major focus.
Yeah, and as an example of just how much of a focus they actually are, spoiler warning, the final boss fight is pretty much entirely in chicken walker mode. Sake! This is meant to be the peak of excitement, the final showdown. Everything leads to this moment, and you're in the bloody walker again.
Well, I think for me, it's just that you're always being thrown into something new. You never really get long enough to gel with the controls. Just when you're starting to get to grips with it, they change things up on you.
Yeah, absolutely. They've tried to cram in too many ideas to show off how useful this gamepad can be, but they all just fail or come across gimmicky. Like, why does all the game dialogue have to come out of the gamepad speakers?
For sharper shooting, use your motion control.
Although I admit it is nice to have a way to mute Slippy and Falco.
Yeah, and also this is meant to be a fast-paced on-rails shooter. So why am I doing things like lowering a robot drone and driving it through small tunnels?
And why is there a stealth mission?
Well, yeah.
This is a game about spaceships and stuff, it's not Call of Duty. It's weird to have a stealth mission in a Star Fox game, full stop, but I wouldn't have minded so much if it wasn't such a terribly designed level. Look at these walls that you can't fly over for some reason. Is it so hard to put a roof on a level? And it's got what has to be one of the slowest, least exciting escape sequences ever.
Well, one of the things the series is known for is replayability. And levels are still designed with those secrets and different paths to take, which is nice. But there does seem to be less variety in the paths though, with fewer planets to go to.
So if for some reason you want to do a second playthrough to make up for having fewer planets, you can approach missions quite differently on that second run. After you've played through once, you'll unlock different vehicles and modes. So for example, on Corneria, you can transform into the Walker. Great.
I feel like we're being very nitpicky here, but I should say that, you know, I did enjoy bits of this. For all of its flaws, it's playable.
That's one for back of the box. It's playable. Hex 2016, good game. When is that high praise? I think the formula wasn't broken. Look at what the 64 version did with one analog stick on a controller. And then look at what they've messed up here with 2 sticks, 2 screens, motion controls, and all kinds of gimmicks. They've lost that pure and simple design that was so much fun.
Well, I mean, I don't think that's quite fair. They obviously had to try something new to kind of update it and refresh the series. You know, on-rail shooters are a pretty dated type of game design, so you can't fault their ambition, really.
Yes, you can. I completely fault their ambition. This just made me miss the classic so much more, so I'm giving it 1 star.
Well, I think there are moments here that Star Fox fans will enjoy. I'm giving it 2 out of 5.